go ahead.
Yeah, you brought up some really interesting points, Abhishek. Actually, right now I'm also doing a course in publishing from Jadavpur University, and we were discussing these very points quite recently. And all the professors are also people who've had many years of experience in the publishing industry, and what they had to say on this very topic about different books being treated differently, and also on communication between authors and publishers. So, one thing is when it comes to communication, most publishing houses are legally required to have almost all the communications with authors over, in some written format, like over email. Like WhatsApp is not really considered valid because, chats can be deleted and stuff like that. But email is forever. So that's why, sometimes there may be like, even if two people talk over the phone, they may have some verbal agreement that, okay, things will be done, stuff will be done like this, but unless and until it's put down in writing, there is still scope for change. So that is why, what I have noticed is that sometimes authors feel that if the publishers prefer to communicate like 90% via email, they feel bad that, okay, the publisher is not very responsive or the publisher is not reaching out to me. But actually, the thing is that the publishers are just trying to fulfill that legality that they have all the communication in writing, so that there is no confusion at any later point and everyone is on the same page.
Just a second. Yes, Kavya, you are saying something.
So, Falguni, the recording has started and we might proceed with the session. I'm so sorry to all the guests. That I did not expect this to happen. And I'm really sorry for losing your time, but I hope we can finish it up soon. Falguni, please take care of it.
Sure. So now we are going to start again formally with all the introductions and everything. Okay, let's give it another start. And I hope we have as engaging discussion as we just had. You have started recording, right, Kavya? I'm going to start. All right. Good evening, everyone. Hope you all had a pleasant Saturday. I'm Falguni, your moderator for the session Trends in the Indian Publishing Industry. On behalf of the Elegant Book Club, I would like to say that we all are very excited to have you all here. As a member of EBC, I can vouch that it is a haven for readers, and I'm so glad to be a part of it. To be a part of an incredible community of all the book lovers. Today, we are joining in for the first ever online literature festival hosted by EBC called Prose and Pixels. With amazing authors, bookstagrammers, literary enthusiasts, we are all in for a treat. Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm Falguni Jain, an editor, writing coach, and a beta reader. Throughout my career, I have collaborated with both published and debut authors, contributing to a diverse portfolio of over 90 books in various genres. I have served as a judge for Page Turner Awards for the past 3 years and have authored two short stories and a handbook titled Mastering Writing Standards. Now, I would quickly like to introduce our panelists. We have on author side Vikas Arun Parikh and Abhishek Sinha. Vikas is a British Indian author from Jaipur. His engaging series, The Adventures of Blue Flamingo, not only entertains but also imparts valuable moral lessons, earning world recognition. His works like Letters to My Mother and Voices of Silent Creek shed light on women's struggles and injustices. Beyond writing, his commitment to women's rights extend to organizing charity events, aligning his actions with the profound themes explored in his books. Abhishek Sinha is a passionate Indian storyteller whose fascination with the lives of people around him inspires the characters in his stories. An alumnus of IIT Delhi and ISB, Abhishek works in the tech industry. By Hook or by Crook is his debut novel, a thrilling crime story that reflects his sharp eye for detail and a gift for suspenseful storytelling. Now, on the publisher's side, we have Samyukta Nair and Dhrumin Chheda. Samyukta Nair is the founder of Paper Lantern Book. She's an author, editor, and a history enthusiast. Her literary journey began with The Warriors of Javida at the age of 16 leading her into fiction and poetry explorations. Samyukta shares intriguing historical insights on her Instagram and YouTube channels called History Episodes. Entrepreneurially driven, she found Wolf Press in 2021, which is now called Paper Lantern Books, a traditional publishing house. Dhrumin is the founder of Arushi Publishing. He's a passionate author exploring diverse genres to offer unique perspectives to readers. His forthcoming series of romance novels tackles serious themes like divorce, mental health, and dysfunctional families, reflecting his commitment to meaningful storytelling. Arushi Publication is his newly established traditional publishing unit, which aims to support writers like himself by providing opportunities to be traditionally published. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us today at Frozen Pixels. This session is Trends in Publishing Industry in India, and we are going to talk about how the industry is doing right now and what do we expect in future. So I think we should just start with the most important question, which is the format in which books are being published. So, for example, ebooks, audiobooks, and even film adaptations are getting so much hype. How do you think the publishing industries and the books in particular, the physical books, are being impacted by this? Who would like to speak first, or anyone want to raise their hand? Okay, we have Samyukta.
Thank you, Falguni, and thank you so much, Elegant Book Club, for inviting me to speak here. And warm welcome to all my fellow panelists. So, basically, you asked a very interesting question. Actually, the format of how books have been published has seen a lot of change ever since the pandemic. Because pre-pandemic, going to bookstores was quite a regular thing among avid readers. But the ebook and audiobook has seen a major rise in popularity ever since things went more online. However, there was a certain section of the population that did, wish for that feeling of going to the bookstore and purchasing a physical book and things like that. So when ever since around early 2023, we have seen late 2022, early 2023, we have seen more bookstores, opening and diversifying their operations, and more people also going back towards paperback and hardback books. However, that I feel that digital audience has remained, when it comes to ebooks and audiobooks, because a lot of people find that easier and also more cost effective, because all these books definitely cost less, plus they get delivered to you immediately. You don't have any waiting time. So that audience, I don't think is ever going to go down. And another interesting point you had raised about, books being converted for the screen. So this is a trend which is already very popular in the American market, and to a certain extent in Britain also. And we are slowly starting to see this trend increasing in India. For example, movies like Razi and 12th Fail were initially books. 12th Fail is, of course, a true experience, but based on the IPS officer's autobiography also. And even very, very recently, there's this movie that came out called Murder Mubarak, and that was originally the book Club You to Death by Anuja Chauhan. So, a lot of literary agencies also have started diversifying their services. They don't just act as an intermediary between an author and a publisher. They also have tie ups with many film houses and OTT platforms in order to get books converted into good scripts. So this is another very new trend we have been seeing in the publishing industry for probably less than 10 years now. And I think it's going to stay because there's always going to be a demand for more content for OTT.
Yes, thank you so much, Samyukta, for these great inputs. As authors, Vikas and Abhishek, what do you think? Do you think that this is a sort of an end goal for writers? So we already know that if you are writing a book, you are automatically going for an ebook as well. But what about audiobooks and screen adaptations? As an author, how likely are you to, go ahead on those paths?
So, so my book latest. So first of all, thanks a lot EBC for inviting me on the panel, and to have all friends as panelists is added bonus. So, letters to my mother, my book has been accepted by Story Inc. for screen adaptation.
Wow.
proposals. So it's still a long process. It will go, they'll pitch books to the production houses, and it may or may not get picked up. So but that's one thing. I think as a authors, anyone who writes would be very, very thrilled if their book is adapted to on screen. But if you look at the future, I think your question had a future element as well. And if you look at the future, there are technologies now with AI coming where you can have augmented reality ebooks or interactive ebooks, where you are interacting with the book and the book is sort of changing the pace or the content based on your liking. Similarly, augmented reality books, I think those are very interesting to see in future, when the books can be turned into sort of not like a full screen experience, but a mini screen experience with a combination of audio, images, and other sensory, and then just on fingertips, with as Samyukta said, with ebooks.
It's a very interesting, prediction. Or, I mean, of course, we know that we are going somewhere on that path, but adding that in this webinar was a really interesting point. Abhishek, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, so I would just like to add two couple of points on Vikas's comments. So first is on the format which we would, I mean, aspire to be published in. I mean, any new format, it adds to our audience base. And as a writer and as a storyteller, we just want a wider audience. I mean, a wider reach to more people, right? And both Vikas and I are fiction authors, so fortunately we have the advantage that our stories might get converted into audio, video, all sorts of formats, right? My book again is in discussions to be converted into a video format again, with the virtue of it being a fiction. But I strongly believe that this format specificity is something to do with the genre of the book. So for example, a non-fiction, I'm not really sure about the audiobook conversion, but paperback is something, or ebooks, for example, is something which people usually prefer to go with the non-fiction. I may be wrong, but I'm just purely speaking from what I've observed through my interaction with readers over the past few months. So that is one thing. Fiction is something, and OTT, during the COVID period, OTT subscriptions were on the rise. So people are more intrigued towards watching crime stories, thriller stories in the form of video content. That is something which has happened, and COVID changed something for the good. The second point, the observation which I made, I wanted to add on Vikas's point, was the AI based content generation, and something which we are also very keen, and some of them are also very scared to accept. But ultimately I feel, and being in the tech industry, I keep hearing this question from all dimensions, as in, is it going to replace employees, is it going to replace customer support, is it going to replace writers, content creators? I strongly feel nothing of that sort is going to happen. It's only going to augment our capabilities. But at the same time, I mean, it has to be responsibly handled. So strong governance is something which is going to drive how AI adoption is taking place in this industry.
Very well said, Abhishek. I see Vikas and Samyukta have raised their hand, but first I would quickly like to ask Dhrumin. Dhrumin, what do you think is the impact of this change in formats on publishing industry? As a publisher, how do you feel that that changes things for you?
No, so initially books were meant only for readers, but nowadays to promote reading, people have come up with various techniques like audiobooks, and let's say ebooks are more for kids to get them into reading, because nowadays if you give a kid a book, nobody will even touch it. But nowadays if you give a kid a screen, they will be intrigued by it. Because even I have a younger brother at my home, and with my own personal experiences, I bought a bunch of books for him and they were left untouched for a year. And I bought my own Kindle, and when I was reading it, he sat with me and he was reading my novel with me. And he's just a 10-year-old kid. So that was my point of realization that I understood. Because initially I was against ebooks and against audiobooks, because books are meant to be books, between just paper, cover, and words. Because nowadays everything just happens on the screen and the digital media, and we need a break from it. Because it has a lot of severe impacts even on a health, mental health, and so on and so forth. So reading is supposed to be a healthy habit, and just even making it into an unhealthy thing is just what I was against. But then again, I saw that a lot of readers are actually developing a reading habit if you're given a Kindle or if they are just given an audiobook. So in the end, then I understood and I feel that it's okay that reading and getting books into their system is what matters the most and not the medium.
Exactly. As long as
So
we
that
can
was how I
inculcate,
made peace with that fact.
as long as we can inculcate the habit of reading amongst youngsters, I think the format isn't really that important.
Yeah, the
Yes,
format isn't really that important, but we should also keep in mind that when you have a Kindle book and when you have a paperback, it depends on a lot of things because while designing a Kindle book, you can't have a completely colored book or you can't have a book with heavy images and with heavy content.
correct,
So that needs to be kept in mind because if you go to convert a heavy content book on a Kindle, it will just go haywire.
correct. That's true. I think these
So which
are
is
some
why I would always
responsibilities.
prefer paperback.
These are responsibility of both the publisher and the author to understand what the content is and how it goes on different formats. Yes, Vikas, you were going to say something.
Yeah, see, I see ebooks and audiobooks as good from a ease of usability point of view, and as Abhishek said, to increase the wider reach. The point which I wanted to make earlier was, so my book is actually selected by Kuku FM for audio translation, and just anyone who sees this at a later point, reaching out to Kuku FM and getting your book translated or converted into an audiobook is a very easy process. So anyone who is seeing it, they can reach out to Kuku FM and they can get their book converted into audiobook. Of course, they have to go through the contract process and all, but it's very, very simple. It's not like hidden something. It's very good to do that.
Thank you so much, Vikas, for this tip, and I'm sure a lot of authors would benefit from that.
Yeah.
Yes, Samyukta, please add your point.
Thank you. No, basically, what I wanted to add on was regarding the use of AI when it comes to books. Because there are actually, I mean, from the publishing perspective, there are actually very blurred lines when it comes to copyright protection for AI work and intellectual property rights. Because and any AI, like suppose an author uses AI to write part of the book, or AI is used to generate the book's cover, there is a question of who it truly belongs to. This is even more problematic when it comes to the content of the book than the cover. Because the book's content has to strictly be the copyright of the author and it has to be the intellectual property of the author. So if someone uses AI to generate any part of that book, this is immediately thrown into doubt. Because they have only put in the prompt, they haven't actually written it, and the written part is generated from millions of sources from around the internet. So you cannot give the copyright to each and every person from whom that source has been taken. So that is why publishers generally discourage authors from using AI to write any part of their book. You can use AI to research your book if you want. That's a completely different thing. But if you want to write the book, it has to be entirely your own work. And also, like I add a clause when any author, comes to publish a book with my publishing house, and I accept it. In addition to the author contract, which lays out the terms of publishing, I also ask them to sign an anti plagiarism agreement in which they have to explicitly state that no part of their book has been written using AI.
Thank you so much, Samyukta. Actually, this was going to be my next question. So let me just frame that question for everyone. How do you think AI is taking over writing, and how do you think publishers and authors are being impacted by it? You might find it helpful. You might find it, you might see it in a negative light. So, what are your opinions about AI in writing?
Should I
Um,
go ahead?
yes, please, Vikas.
See, I mean, I see it as a very useful tool, and this I am coming only from an author's perspective. Say, for example, I want to write a short story, and I am thinking about the idea, but it's not moving ahead, and I want to write. So, for example, I want to write a novel. I want to write a novel which is 72,000 words. I am framing it, but I have to do a lot of research for it. I have to sort of frame it. AI reduces the time elapsed on research, beta reading, editing as well. For example, I write a short story and I give it to Chat GPT to edit it. So it does about 90 to 95% job correct. There are still grammatical copy editing issues after that as well. Second thing is that idea generation. So I mean, I find AI, using AI, very very helpful.
I would like to add on to that. I find submitting my work to AI as a risky prospect, I would say, because since ChatGPT is being brought up and it's learning from the content that's being, delivered to it. I think it's using our content as well to, enhance its own knowledge. So I believe sending my work or as an author, any work to ChatGPT for editing is a little risky, but to everyone their own.
Oh,
But yes, 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 please, Vikas.
one point there is so for example, you write a story and you send it to Chat GPT, and you can actually ask it, prompt it, say what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses of the story, how can I make it more better. So you can actually increase your skill. So it works as a beta reader as well, beta reader and editor as well. Actually, I have a question for Samyukta, when you talk about plagiarism, and if I, let's say, write a story or a novel and I send it to Chat GPT, it changes the grammar, maybe some of the sentences here and there. How would you see that as a publisher?
Okay, so using Chat GPT, so if you, it's kind of a gray area because when you use Chat GPT to edit your book, it's not strictly writing the book for you. The writing has been done by you, and the
Yeah.
editing is being done by Chat GPT. But the problem is that the editing also is being taken from various similar sources around the internet. So because of that, there is a risk of some of that leaking into your book and messing with the originality of it. And so, if a publisher is to see that, a lot of publishers also run books through plagiarism, sites, plagiarism detection sites, much like professors do in universities. And if a lot of your book has been edited, if the AI has made a lot of changes to your book that way, there is the risk of your book being considered plagiarized, even if you wrote the entire thing yourself. And also, the point is that, as I'm aware, as you yourself had mentioned, that AI editing is not watertight, and a lot
No.
of things do, come through. So eventually, it is better to get it edited by a human being. But this also reduces your risk of plagiarism because it's still a very gray area if you get your book edited by ChatGPT, and that could potentially create problems.
So as an author, I 100% believe that there has to be a thorough editing process, a human editing process before the book gets released. So, I mean, I am very very staunch advocate for that. But I mean, as I said, I mean, AI has its own use cases. The productivity increases by many many folds. If you are researching on a historical fiction, you just write and you can get words after words after word, and then you can sort of spin your story out of it.
Dhrumin, you wanted to add something to that, to the conversation?
Yeah. So AI is a modern technology, but in the end, it's just a technology. So it depends completely on the person whether he wants to use it or misuse it. Because let's see simple technology like our phone. With our phone, life has become so easy for us. But at the same time, there are a lot of misuses also. So even I believe that AI can be a friend, can be a greatest friend as well as a greatest enemy. It depends what you see it as.
That's correct. Abhishek, you have raised your hand. Please, sir.
Yeah,
Please
yeah.
ask.
To add to the already discussed points, just to add my 2 cents here. So, firstly, I have seen stories and content written purely by AI, and it's very difficult for you to bifurcate if this is human written or AI written. So, I mean, that is a bit scary on for a content creator or a publisher for that matter. Having said that, I'm strongly against, at least in my personal work, I have defined domains where I use AI or ChatGPT or any similar tool. One of them is definitely for research purposes, if I have to brainstorm on some idea, or if I have to seek some creative input, some sort of inputs. More importantly, where it has helped me the most till now is for creation of marketing collaterals. So let's say some video, some image, if I have to make, I just give it a prompt, because in that way I'm not disclosing my entire story, because there is, again, as you pointed out, Falguni, there is a concern of IP protection, as in, is my data secure, or will it be exposed to some other user. So I am not in a way disclosing the entire story. I'm just giving it a 2 3 lines of prompt, and still getting my work done, and that is increasing my productivity multiple folds. That is reducing my cost in that way, because I am not paying any creative artists, because these are some ideas, I mean, some pillars which I just want to get done with. I mean, I'm okay to have any sort of creatives in place. It might not be the most perfect one or most ideal one. So that is where it is helping me so far. And number three is what Vikas said, in understanding the language, and if whether the things have been communicated properly. Again, here I personally don't prefer exposing my complete story, so I keep the only the parts where I'm the most confused about, I just expose that, and then I take inputs on what's your opinion on the tonality, on the flow of story, all those points. So, and I get some sort of inputs which I, again, it's up to me to whether include or not, because at the end of the day, I am a writer and I have my own writing style. So again, AI may or may not be following my own writing style. And I don't want to, not everyone wants to go the traditional way or the textbook way, right? So because we all are striving towards creating our own brand, our own image. So we sought to have our own writing style as well. So AI, again, in that case, might not be very helpful.
Correct. I agree, Abhishek. Samyukta, please add your points to it.
Okay, so this is something that's potentially going to be seen as a very old-fashioned way of thinking. But the thing is, when a person, like when we just think about how much easier AI makes our life. I mean, yeah, definitely. Why should you pass over something that makes your process easier? But I often find that the books that have been written and researched entirely by the author, manually. I'm not saying to go to a book library and open source them, but you have to go through all the research sources and everything yourself rather than get AI do it and compile the points for you. I somehow feel that books which have been written with that kind of effort and that kind of care, somehow it shows in the way the author talks about their book also, because while they have been looking for that kind of information for that particular book, they also come across a lot of peripheral information which just adds value to their own understanding of the topic and writing. Whereas when it comes to AI, suppose you want to know specifically, let us say, about the Regency era, you will get those specific points which you have looked for, but it will not give you a broader understanding of that era. And in that respect, it will not enrich your experience of that book. It will not enrich your knowledge about that particular period. And in return, you can see, I mean, it's very clear, you can, there are so many authors who write, for example, romance novels set in the Regency era, and you can see which ones have done, very peripheral internet research, and which ones have actually gone into a lot of detail and taken a lot of pain to research everything themselves. In fact, there and a lot of other, in fact, there's this author called Georgette Heyer. She was a very popular author of Regency romance in the 20th century. And her research was so extensive that she was considered an authority on the Regency period in England. And, many people, even many historians and many professors also would say that, some people would find the things she wrote about very unbelievable. But even other professors would bet that, saying that she's truly an authority because of the amount of research that she has put in. And as someone who has read her books, I can definitely say that that adds a whole new level of believability to her books compared to those of authors who have just done very fringe level research. So, definitely I would say AI makes your job easier, but it doesn't necessarily make you an expert, and therefore it doesn't necessarily make your book entirely believable.
Those were some excellent points added by you, Samyukta. Because, yes.
Yeah, 2 points. Abhishek, I think you were mentioning that the writer's tone and the style of writing. There are features in AI ChatGPT now where you can add your article and say write it in the same style, and it'll do that for you. So that's a dangerous trend as well. Second thing is you talked about creating the creatives using AI. So what tool is it? Is it Midjourney?
Yeah, I mean, there are tools, Midjourney, and there are some video creation tools also, and then you can easily get your short 10-15 second clips out of that.
Okay, I will reach out to you to get the names
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that
definitely.
easier for creating marketing content, because that's another hassle.
I think we all can use some great AI tools ideas for different sorts of work,
Of
but
course.
we can keep that for later. Yes, Samyukta, you have something to add to that?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add on another point which I forgot earlier. There's this classic 1984 by George Orwell. In that, there is actually a precursor to what we consider AI generated books right now, because, in the very tightly controlled government that they live under, there is a certain formula by which books are, created and released, and it's all very mechanical. Of course, George Orwell didn't know what AI would be, but he had a pretty good guess of it when he spoke about it. And after a point, all the books became quite similar to each other, and it was just certain content being recycled in many different formats for the reader. So I feel if we rely too much on AI, we kind of kill that human creativity.
That's an excellent point. And I have read 1984, and I don't think I saw it in that light. I did notice the government's intervention in the content that was being shared, but tracking it back to AI is a really interesting observation. I'll keep in mind when I'm reading the book again. Now, let's get away from AI for a while, and let's talk about our readers. So, both publishers and authors need readers to survive, right? So, what do you think is the trend going on among readers with regards to the genres they prefer and with regards to the kind of content they are looking forward to these days? Who would like to go first? Dhrumin, yes, please.
Yeah, so nowadays what I have seen is readers are very specific to the authors more than the genre. Because if whenever I go to a bookstore, instead of looking at the books, I just see at what the readers are looking at to get a glimpse of as to what should I be knowing about them. So in that I have observed that more than the title, more than the cover, the readers focus mainly on the author. Because I know I'm a reader myself, and even I prefer reading multiple genres. But even in multiple genres, I know which author is my favorite, which author I do not like reading much. And from there, I realized that it is not a book that sells, it is the author that sells.
That's very true. I think we all have our favorite authors or authors that are recommended to us the most number of times. So, yes, this bias about the author is definitely at an high. Yes, Vikas, please.
I mean, I feel the way society is going, a stressful environment, work culture, family relationships strained. I think self-help books are get selling like hotcakes. I mean, whether events which I have been part of, uh, whatever it says, like change your life, change your style, change your this, change your that. I mean, self-help books goes really really quickly.
I think it's
There's
very easy to get that nerve of the reader. Everyone is struggling with something or the other, and to catch that nerve of the reader and then selling that book really makes it, as I said, sell like hotcakes.
And I think in India, because we are culturally connected to our mythology, I think in India mythology also sells.
It certainly
These
does.
two, these two are the genre which I would say sells most. Unfortunately, neither of those genre are mine.
Abhishek, yes, please.
Yeah, so I was just in terms of genres, I was just exactly going to talk about these 2 points: non-fiction and fiction with a tinge of mythology, Indian mythology, which is doing very well these days. But having said that, specifically for fiction genres like mine, crime thrillers or murder mysteries, I was actually doing a research 2 weeks back as to what exactly is it that readers look for. The topmost reason is already covered here, which is authors. So they just go and pick their favorite authors books. Second biggest reason was of why readers bought certain book was because it was part of an ongoing series. and we have seen examples of ample number of such books which have come, I mean, which have had their own sequels, prequels, or been converted into some sort of series, or in fact gotten extended in the form of a video or audio content, and that is what is driving readers towards it. Number three is, I mean, I'm not true for all the readers or hardcore readers, but there is a trend of new age readers which pick their first books, right? For them, a short easy read with a good story is something which they keep looking for. And that too, I mean, I've heard this comment from multiple such readers of mine as to, your story is actually missing a message. So they actually look for a message in it. I mean, I failed to give a message in a crime thriller. I hope I don't give any. But that is something which I have observed over the past couple of weeks, which in my research, because there's something which actually intrigues me as to what drives the readers the most.
Uh, Samyukta, please.
Okay, so actually, the preferences of readers have also changed a lot after the pandemic. I mean, I keep coming back to this point of the pandemic, but I mean, prior to the pandemic, a lot of people read a lot more poetry than they do right now. I mean, I think we all remember the era of Rupi Kaur poetry on Instagram. And there was a time when, people really liked that, short format poetry. And there was also a time in the early 2010s, late 2000s, when fiction was super popular. As I think in India, this trend was also started and pioneered by a large extent, to a large extent by Chetan Bhagat.
Chetan Bhagat. Agreed. Yeah.
But during the pandemic and after, what I see as a publisher and as an editor is that nonfiction is ruling. And because people want to look at books that they consider as something they seriously derive value from. I mean, I'm not just talking about value as in the pleasure of reading the book. People are actually looking to derive some kind of real life educational value from it. And, another genre that is very popular right now is armed forces related books. And this is also very popular in the movies, as we can see ever since 2019, and the Balakot strike and all that. A lot more people, I think, are very interested in what happens in the armed forces, and because of that, books that are set in and around the armed forces are doing very well. And if it doesn't matter there if the author is very well known or not, if people are browsing Amazon or browsing a bookstore and they see some books about it, they will definitely at least pick it up to read the blurb, even if they don't end up buying it. So much so that Penguin Random House India has launched an entire imprint called Penguin Veer, which is just for armed forces related books. And there's also another genre which is on the rise right now, and that is horror. And this has also become very popular in the past few years, and it has like a very serious, a small but serious and very consistent reader base. And again, of course, everyone has their favorites, but they basically look for that thrill in every book. So they are always open to reading, books by new authors. And another thing I would like to say is that an agent whom I had spoken to not very long ago had mentioned that while poetry remains one of the most widely submitted genres even today, most of the publishing houses are not very interested in it because it is not considered something very saleable or very profitable in this current market.
Those are some excellent points by all of you. But I'm surprised to know that none of you mentioned romance genre and smut as we call it these days, because that is the most hot topic of the time, right? I mean, would you agree with it? With Anna Huang and writers like that, it's really topping the charts right now. Uh, yes, Arush, sorry, Dhrumin, yes, you wanted to add to it.
Yeah, so I am a romance author myself, and romance is a genre that I would call evergreen because the target audience is very easy to target. And so romance books also depend mainly on the character's age. If your character is somewhere around the age of 18 to 21, you can target the college audience. And if your main characters are a couple, so you need to target those audience because mostly kids won't be interested in reading couples and couples won't be interested in reading kids. So before writing a first draft of the romance novel, you need to have the target audience in mind, and you need to know that okay, if I am writing a college level romance novel, so I need to have contacts with at least 5 to 6 persons whom I can approach with the book. So before I started writing the book with my personal experience, I sold 1,000 copies before even I wrote the first word.
Wow, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dhrumin, for that addition. Samyukta, yes, you are going to say something.
Yes, speaking of romance, I think people would probably be surprised to know that fantasy romance is a very popular genre, especially among young adult readers, and this is a very untapped market in India. I mean, there are a few authors who do write in this genre, but their books in other genres are much more famous than their young adult books. And authors like Andali Bajid are slowly building up the young adult, genre in India. But if you look at books by people like Sarah J. Maas or J.K. Rowling or people like that, those kind of foreign books in this genre have been doing well for decades right now. But we need to think of probably what would kids in India like to read, because the problem I have noticed in the Indian market is that books written for young adults often cater to a mentally much younger audience. I mean, I had this problem when I was in school. I would look for books for my, high school reading level, and I would find things that were much more childish and, in my age section in the library. And as a result, I would only pick up foreign authors because they wouldn't treat me like a child. And I feel more Indian authors need to write books that actually target people in an age specific manner. In fact, the British market does extremely well when it comes to writing young adult books because they don't treat children like children. They treat them, like people of their age who are also exploring the world and understanding new things. And because of that, a lot of young adult romance and teen romance and all that does extremely well in foreign markets. So perhaps that is something romance writers can consider in India also.
I also believe that somewhere the either the authors or the readers are a little shy when choosing Indian authors in a fantasy genre. I have seen several Indian authors writing fantasy and new adult fantasy or romantasy, as we say it these days. But I have noticed they using pen names, something more westernized, and even the content is very much westernized. They use names and locations that doesn't sound Indian. So, do you think is it because the readers are not as acceptive of of an Indian author in that genre, or is it the fear of an Indian author to write such content with their own name? What do you think it is? Vikas, please.
I mean, so I'll not deep dive on this. I'll just share one experience with you. So I was speaking with an author and he said that why would I read a pulp fiction or a romantic novel with someone named Rahul or Ramesh or Bharti or something. So that it takes away uh, from the profile. So I think that was the comment which I got.
Wow, I have never heard of anything like that, but okay, I can take it as something that a reader might be thinking of.
Yeah.
Yes, Abhishek, please.
John and Susan, they look more sexier than our Indian names.
Yeah.
That could be it, but we are yet to know.
No, similar comments. Even I had heard. So even in my book, the characters were named differently initially, but then I had to change those names. But the point which I'm trying to raise here is that this is not just limited to romance or fantasy genre. This is something. And by the way, I'm doing next Saturday. I'm doing a talk on this specific to thriller and mystery genre in India. That so I have a picture which I clicked last week at a bookstore. The crime thriller section, all the books, 100% of the books are there are written by foreign authors. And then to share a very personal anecdote, so when the book released, I got some praises, people comparing my work to or stories to likes of Agatha Christie or Sidney Sheldon. I never got compared to any Indian author. Nobody remarked that your story is on the lines of Kulpreet Yadav's story or Arvind Gadiga's story. I mean, that saddens me a bit, because ultimately these are the people we look up to. I mean, these are the people who are creating a market for us. They took the first step, and these people are greats. I mean, we have grown up learning their works, learning from them. So, I mean, this is something which I am actually going to talk about, as I said, in the next week, and I have support from a couple of other authors. But again, coming back to the point that this is something which is not genres, not specific to a particular genre. There are few other genres here, and it needs I mean, drastic shift in the mindset, and I genuinely believe we are the flag barriers of that mind shift change.
I completely agree, and we would love to hear you talk more about this topic. And I hope we could see you in that session. Yes, Samyukta, please go ahead.
I think part of the reason why a lot of people, a lot of you had mentioned that Vikas had mentioned that, readers look for more foreign settings and foreign names. I think that is because that is what they are used to reading, like that is what they have been exposed to for a very long time, and they have got used to picturing characters like that in their mind. Like and because of that, it's a very new thing for them to come across Indian characters and Indian names. But there are authors who are actually breaking the boundaries and writing more books with Indian settings in it. And I think people also need to understand that yeah, Indians can very much write romance and experience romance also. It's not just a foreign thing. But I think the preference I think the preference basically comes down to finally what the reader is used to. They choose to stay with something that they are comfortable with and familiar with.
Okay, I think we have just time for one more question. But okay, Vikas, please go
A
ahead.
quick comment. I mean, we are a 1.4 billion population country. I mean, I'm sure romance is there somewhere.
That's a very well added point. Okay, so I'm gonna go with my last question because I don't think we have time for any more. Which is, as we discussed before the event start as well. Just a second, there's some disturbance. Dhrumin, can you please mute your call for a while? Thank you. Okay. So yes, my last question is, uh, as we discussed already, how do you think the traditional self-publishing and hybrid publishing are doing right now? And how do you think, we would be going forward from here? What trends do you expect in this publishing industry as a whole? Yes, Samyukta.
I think nowadays, I'm sorry, I'm always the first to raise my hand. Sorry about that.
It's
Uh,
actually a great thing. We are actually very eager to hear you with every new question.
Thank you. With what I have to, what I have noticed anyway is that nowadays writers, authors are much more aware and informed about the differences between traditional publishing, vanity publishing, and hybrid publishing. Like about 10 years ago, also a lot of people didn't know that. And because of that, I feel that in author choice now there is a kind of hierarchy. Number one, they want to look at the publisher with the biggest name, and secondly, they also look at traditional publishers as the first option, followed by hybrid publishers. And many people keep vanity publishing as the very last option, only if they do not get anything else and they desperately want to see that book out in print. So I feel this is a good trend because authors are more aware of their options, because previously a lot of people were not aware of this, and a lot of people were not also aware of the ethics of being a literary agent. And it was very easy for people to end up in situations which they could have avoided had they been a little more aware. And now I think traditional publishing is what everyone wants. That is the most sought after thing, but it's kind of a gatekeeping process, because there's always a commissioning editor who will stand between the author and the actual publisher, and they'll be like, okay, first let us see if we think your book is going to do well enough, or if your book is interesting enough or meets our list or whatever. So, because of that, there are again a lot of people who want to be authors and who have started writing. Especially during the pandemic, there was a boom in people who wanted to become authors and who started writing. So, those who kind of get filtered out of the traditional publishing process tend to go towards hybrid publishing. And if they get filtered out of there as well, they tend to go towards, vanity publishing as a kind of last option. But that it's not a shame to go for a vanity publisher. I'm not saying that, but in fact, a lot of people don't have any choice, and they get started. They get started like that, and then build their way up. But I would definitely say that it is good to be more aware of, where vanity publishers fall short. And it is good to be aware that there are, traditional publishers are not just, the big four or big five. There are many more who can, get your book published for you without you draining your bank account entirely.
Very well mentioned, Samyukta. And I believe that this is basically because of the lack of understanding of how the publishing market works. So when it comes to traditional, as you said, there people just know about four or five, and it's such a gatekeep process. Like people don't understand how to get in. Then they are left with very few options, out of which some are really popular ways to go ahead, and the others are quite hidden and not really talked about. So I think that awareness is very important to generate among readers and writers, of course. Yes, Vikas, you please go ahead.
So, so I'll just share a statistic. So there are about 90,000 books published every year in India alone, including all types of publishing, and only 10% of the books cross 1,000 sale mark. So I think there's a lot of desperation with authors to get published. I mean, they don't wait for the right publisher. They don't look out for various publishers as Samyukta, Dhrunim. So they'll not probably reach out to these people who have started the publishing journey. So there's a lot of desperation with authors. So I think from an author side, our bunch, we should be more patient in terms of exploring options and not fall into traps of money making vanity publishing, because that doesn't do anything. It's better to self publish without any cost rather than paying someone 50, 60, 1 lakh, 150 for vanity publishing. So I think the awareness and a little bit patience from author side, and similarly on publisher side. I think as Samyukta earlier pointed out, there's lack of awareness, lack of, it's all gray area. There's no standard. So if you want to open a bank account, you know how it's done, how it should be done. There's a standard set of processes. So publishing industry is all gray. There's no black and white. So even some people who are doing good work in publishing, they will not find more readers or more authors. So I think from publisher side, you should be more proactive in sharing the information, being visible out there, so that people can get to them to be an author. I mean, I know people who are much educated who are falling into vanity publishing trap, and they don't know these options are available. So I think from publisher side, they should be more proactive in informing what their services are.
That's very well said, because we know what we see, and what we see on Google are the top results of the top publishers. And
Yeah.
getting away from it, it's word of mouth. So we can talk to fellow writers and we can ask for their experiences and follow a certain path based on that. But again, coming to know of some publishers out of nowhere is like finding a needle in a hay. Yes, Vikas.
I'm just raising my hand after Samyukta. I didn't had a point. I just raised the point. So I'm trying to beat her to raising the point now
Okay,
throughout the
okay, it's
session.
not a competition going on, please.
And I'm just
Abhishek.
kidding. I'm just kidding.
Okay, Abhishek, please. Abhishek, can you hear me? I think your screen is frozen. Okay, let's skip to Dhrumin. Dhrumin, do you have something to add to this?
Yeah, so nowadays authors are getting educated away from traditional publishers, but being a traditional publisher, they just know the textbook dictionary meaning. And that says that even the marketing cost will be borne by the traditional publisher. So whenever I am in discussion with an author, and the moment I tell them that you need to pay for marketing, they say no, even you are a self-publisher, Prose is a traditional publisher. So then it is difficult for me to explain them that why am I a better choice than other self-publishing companies, because I am very brutal when it comes to conversations with authors about publishing. I tell them that if you go to any self-publisher in India, the most top reputed self-publishing companies, they are going to loot you, because I personally have a lot of negative experiences that I do not share with authors. I do not know if I am allowed to take names over here, so let me be anonymous. But I recently have been duped by a publisher when I was only an author. So they told me that they are a traditional publishing company, And afterwards, they told me that they need a guarantee of 500 pre-orders. So that was my first book, and they told me that 500 pre-orders is just nothing. We can get you a sales of 10,000, 20,000 copies, and the printing cost will be borne by us. And when the book was being formatted, when the cover was being ready, and afterwards, my book was turned into a 500-page giant. You can call it an encyclopedia, and the MRP was 800. And afterwards, they told me that now you need to sell 500 copies first from your end. Afterwards, we will do the printing. And at that time, I was just stuck because I had just signed a contract, and if I could not purchase it, then they scared me that we will go to the courts, we will take legal actions against you. And that time, I was just on a beginning journey, and I had not even informed my family, or at that time, I was not earning anything. So I just almost planned that I will just leave this industry and it is just like Bollywood and I'm not going to maintain over here. So let me just go and study. So with that, I just found another publishers who helped me with the entire process, and then I found a very close friend of mine from India itself who told me it's not an issue. You do not need to do the pre-orders. They won't go to the courts for you. Even they are not a legally registered company. So with what will they go to the court? And with that, it was my very first book, and I have not marketed much because I could not market it. And afterwards, I just had to let it go. Then I just took a year a break from writing and I just started exploring about the industry, about various publishers. And now, just last month ago, that publishing company texted me again saying, we are sorry for whatever we have done, but please do not publicly tell us whatever had happened between us. So I just told them that whatever you did was not wrong, and it is now my duty to help other authors from falling in the same trap. And I have saved at least 10 authors who left that company. So that is who I am because I am very brutal about what work I do and what is true, what is untrue, what is morally correct, what is morally incorrect.
Thank you so much, Roman, for sharing this experience with us. I think as authors, we are always scared of situations like these because, as unaware as we are about the whole process, it becomes really scary, especially when the publisher is not being as transparent and when the contracts are included. It becomes a very messy area to deal with. But I'm sure with your experience, a lot of us will learn and will try to make a better choice for themselves.
And
Abhishek,
moreover, authors nowadays do not even tell openly that they have been cheated because there is a fact that यार अभी हम कैसे बोले कि हम इतने बेवकूफ थे, you know. So even that gives the publisher the edge कि okay, come on, we can do it once again.
exactly, and I think
Because
we
I
have to
know
be
that,
open about our experiences, so at least other people can save themselves and they don't get into similar situations.
yeah, because I am very open about all the publishers who have duped me and exactly how they have duped me. And I know 50% of them might think that okay, Dhruman is a fool. But I am okay to talk to only those 50% who will learn something from my experience and will not fall in the same trap that I have fallen. So I am only for those 50%.
Thank you so much, Roman, for sharing this with us. Abhishek, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. So, with respect to the trend, see, the biggest trend I see happening in this industry is mostly the democratization of services. I mean, see, there are two, three things driving this change. Number one, all the authors and the publishers and all the service providers are getting much more educated. There is much more information exchange happening now than before. So, we have different communities of writers, we have communities with readers, we have communities with agents. So we keep exchanging information, and we keep discussing the goods, bads, uglies of all these services. That's number one. Number two is just think, draw parallels to any e-commerce business. I mean, with publishers being the marketplaces, and with writers being the sellers. I mean, there are specific service providers which I see coming up more and more in the future. I mean, specific marketing agencies, agencies for book distribution. That has already happened, but there is limited awareness about that. So that's number two. Number three, there are more and more agents also coming up to connect the dots, the connect the gap, as Vikas also spoke about this. See, currently, most of the authors, what they do is they pitch to the top publishing houses. The top publishing houses are much more selective in their approach, and then the natural fallback option is to self-publish. But there are many more paper lanterns, many more petals, Arushi publications, which are not going to charge anything for their services. But there is this gap which exists in the market, which I see getting filled with the specialized services and the increased awareness. And hence I call this the democratization of this industry.
That's very well articulated, Abhishek. We are past our webinar time, but quickly, Samyukta, if you can add your points over here.
Thank you. Basically, another point which I would like to add on when it comes to which influences the author's choice as to which route to choose is the point of control. Because I would just like to speak very quickly about the point of control as well as the pre-order clause that Dhrumin had mentioned. So, when it comes to the point of control, there are some authors who want to get their books traditionally published, and yet they want to have the final say when it comes to every aspect of publishing the book. Now, when it comes to this, it becomes a little difficult to work with a traditional publisher because a lot of authors, for example, there are many authors who are very resistant when an editor from a traditional publisher or any qualified and experienced editor tells them that okay, your book does require some major changes. They immediately become defensive because they are like, but what's wrong with my book? And I understand that all authors do see their book as their baby and they have put in a lot of effort over there. But when you work with a traditional publisher, you're definitely going to, at least in most cases, you're going to have editors who have, years of experience and who are going to tell you, the flaws in your book. That's their job. And they're going to suggest various corrections. Whereas, and of course, the editor doesn't force any corrections on the author. Finally, to go with them or not is the author's choice. But things like certain rephrasing, certain grammatical and linguistic corrections are seen as non-negotiable. Whereas a lot of authors are quite resistant to this because, especially if an editor tells them, that, okay, this part of your book doesn't read very well, or this part of your story or characterization doesn't make any sense, and it would be better if you rewrote this part. A lot of authors don't like that, and they feel that they're losing control over their manuscript, which is actually not the case. I mean, it's just that your manuscript is being improved, and sometimes you need a third person's perspective to tell you that. Whereas there are other authors who prefer to, and also when it comes to traditional publishing, the author will not always have access to all the sales numbers in real time. You will receive updates from the publisher telling you that okay, this month these many copies were sold, and or this quarter these many copies were sold, and therefore this is the royalty that you get. Whereas in self-publishing, the author, like when it comes to vanity publishing, of course, there is little to no editing done, and the author's manuscript is pretty much published as it was written. And of course, when it comes to self-publishing, the author can see all the sales numbers in real time. So a lot of authors expect that in traditional publishing, which is not always possible. So they also opt for self-publishing because they feel they can retain that level of control over their book. Then also speaking about the pre-order clause, a lot of traditional publishers do make their money mainly like 90% through book sales as well as through marketing packages also. But I definitely agree that 500 pre-orders, especially for a book priced very high, is far too much for any author to meet. And I feel that like it is quite common for a lot of traditional publishers to ask authors to have a certain number of pre-orders, but something like 50, 100, even a maximum of 150 pre-orders is a little more reasonable with even discounts offered for the authors. No author should have to buy their book at full price, their own book. And also because it makes sense in a way to have a small number of pre-orders required, because the publisher also earns only through the book sales when it comes to traditional publishing. And suppose the book is published and the publisher has put in their resources, but ultimately it sells only 20 copies. It is a loss for the publisher. So that is why they ask the author to ensure a certain number of pre-orders. But yeah, something like 500 pre-orders, or and the author having to buy their own book at full price and everything, that is definitely a rip-off.
Thank you so much, Samyukta, for a really great final note about this entire, industry as a whole. Now, as I mentioned, that we are way past our time slot, and Kavi is over here with a video on. So that reminds me that I have to say my final thank yous and wrap up this session. So I would like to say before we end our session, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to each of you for making our webinar Trends in Indian Publishing Industry such a huge success. Your points, your insights into the industry as authors and as publishers were brilliant. Together we have definitely learned a lot of things today, whether it's about AI, whether it's how to, how to deal with the publishers, all of those things, and even what the readers are interested in reading these days. So, a lot of valuable insights were shared today. I would like to thank our speakers, Vikas Arun Parikh, Abhishek Sinha, Samyukta Nair, Dhrumin Chheda. Thank you so much, all of you, for sharing your expertise and valuable insights. A special thanks to our audience who were constantly supporting us with their likes and hearts and claps. That really encouraged us to, keep going, and we didn't even realize when we were past our timeline. I would Most importantly, I would like to express my gratitude to Elegant Book Club and Kavya, who is right here, for providing us the platform and support that made this event possible. That allowed all the readers and even all the audience to be a part of such an enriching discussion. And your commitment to promoting literary discourse is commendable. Lastly, to all the viewers who are viewing us on YouTube or any other platform, who have joined us from all over globe, thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of this enlightening discussion. We all look forward to hosting more such insightful events in the future and continuing this journey of exploration and learning together. Thank you so much, everyone, for this event.
Thank you, Falguni. Thanks a lot. Before we end, I would like to address, Dhrumin, can you sit somewhere? Dhrumin, कहीं बैठ जाओ भाई. And can we just request to end the recording, please?